Hello, this is Melissa. It is Real History, and today is March the 7th, 2024. And I'm talking with Elmer, who is in Thailand. He's originally from Norway. And we have just spent 40 minutes trying to get our tech coordinated. This is the first time we've spoken, and I think it's a testament to our patience here. So I can barely hear him, but this is an incredible improvement over the feedback and the fact that neither one of us could hear each other for a while. So hello, Elmer.
Oh, hello, Melissa. Thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure. I want to say before we take off, I have mentioned this to the audience, that you made a video, I think back in 2009, called Awaken the Dream, about chemtrails and geoengineering.
That's correct. That's correct, Melissa. I made that over a year period, undercover, so to say.
Yes.
So, yes, I did. And I borrowed a lot of cameras from colleagues, and they were asking me, what do you need all those cameras for? And I just gave him there's some stupid story that, I'm just filming some atmospheric, things. And, and I had like 5 cameras standing in each direction, east, west, filming for hours, And, and I put that together in my computer and I sped it up, for a time-lapse effect. And so I was filming in Sweden and Denmark and Norway and different places. And yeah, generally, it was my father that first got me onto it, but he died 3 months later. And of course I heard Alan talk a lot about that geoengineering. So that led me on in 2007 to really go deep into the matter. So I searched up old patents and I looked at Edward Heller's work, and I had a few friends back then that saw the same thing, and others just fluffed it off as usual. And so, but I had a lot of difficulties making it, editing, and I had a lot of problems. I couldn't load it up to YouTube even in 2010, 9, 11. So already then it was trouble to just get it out. So I ended up making a lot of CD recordings, and covers, hundreds of them, and just handing them out to people, that was interested. So that's how we got it around. So, and I sent it to Alan too, but I know Alan was very busy. So Alan sent a very nice email and thanking me but I guess he was very, very busy. And things were just piling up for him. So, and I was very surprised to see that it was up suddenly after all these years. So you fixed that, I guess. So.
Yeah. Well, it was, you did such a good job, but we were crazy busy. There were so many things that we wanted to do, but we never had time for. And it's not like I'm sitting here with a lot of time on my hands, but there were a few things that I really wanted to get up, and your documentary was one of them. So,
yeah.
That's like I've accomplished 1 or 2 or 3 things on a list of a lot.
Yeah, I know. It takes a long time, So I used a long time to make this. I would say I was delayed a year just by technical difficulties. The computer crashing, I had to restart, and just editing. And I know it's a very long documentary, and if I made it today, I would, take out the Alex Jones parts and stuff like that. But, I didn't know at the time, who that guy was, if you get my drift, because I would, it was very long, but it went into the green agenda and everything, and I wanted to connect the dots,
Well, it's good. I've got it up as 2 parts, and I think it breaks it into a nice chunk. It is a long documentary, but I think it is one of the more comprehensive ones on the whole geoengineering agenda, because you did cover all the bases. So,
yeah, more or less. Yeah. And the funny thing was that, my father and me, we had a very, very close relationship the last 5 years of his life after my mother died in 2002. And, he was very open-minded, and he was already retired on his 15th year. And he used to be an airline pilot and a fighter pilot, and he just showed me some video one day. This was in June of 2007, and said, Elmer, I'm sitting here out on the porch and I'm filming up the sky, and I know a lot about meteorology and, all the Latin names for types of clouds, and, and he was like, but I never seen anything like this in my career as 40 year flying around in the world. And this must be some kind of military experimentation. And he had not read anything about chemtrails. He was, so his hunch was, this is something that the military are doing in military airspace.
Here's the thing, Elmer.
Like off the cuff.
He had observed. He knew what things were supposed to look like.
And he filmed with his video camera.
Yeah.
And he said, look, Elmer, they're expanding and expanding these trails. This is not normal. This is not water condensation trails. And I should know I have 25,000 flying hours all over the world with Boeing 747s and you name it, And I even went into his video archive. I found some footage, of him filming normal contrails from jet just above them, coming into New York, but I've lost those tapes, unfortunately, and a lot of them moving from apartment to apartment. But never mind. But he actually got me onto that one, and Alan Watt, of course. Without Alan, I wouldn't have probably made any of this, and it was like, when you went into the U.S. Patent Office and you could find patent 3,003,204 Chang, Mr. Chang from Hughes Aircraft Company in 1992. And, it was all there, and you had all these people from CFR that admitted they were going to do it, and then now they're admitting they are doing it, but that's many years later, so. But what I found out that I had some friends that were like roof makers, and they were noticing it because they were early up in the morning and they saw this thing coming in, and that was strange. And like you probably have experienced, people with the more academic education they have, the more brainwashed they are, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, but people with less, like a normal intelligence, this is not normal. Never saw this before, and he was in my age. Now I'm 55, but this was 15 years ago. So, but he's, that was, astonishing. But when I tried to show it to my engineer friends, which actually one guy worked in the weapon industry in Norway, and he was like, they tried all kinds of excuses. Just because there's more pollution in the air, that's why they're hanging longer, and it's just contrails. Oh, okay. No, it's not, and it got worse by year by year. So, the weather in Norway has been terrible, from, I would say, 2007 up till today. It's raining a lot more than normal. It's always eggshell covered. And I know many people that know about this, but it's like, but it's still a no-go area in some ways, even for, and it's like, but I think it's, like Alan said, it has like probably 10 layers to it, the reason they're doing it. Mm-hmm. So, and everything from conducting the sky, making that conductive to have impact on our biological bodies by, releasing all those particles of metals, and that comes in the soil, in the food, into the air. I also mentioned, I knew that Alan was a smoker, or smoked cigarettes, right?
Yeah, well, he did for a long time. He did eventually quit.
Yeah, I'm still smoking, but he said something very interesting. He said that, when you smoke, you get tar on your lungs, the capillaries on your lungs. And he had a theory that actually protected the lungs a little bit. So
Yes,
he coughed up a lot of this crap.
That was interesting. I mean, ultimately, the damage that he thought that it was doing to his health, he had to give it up. But he did think, and I have talked to other smokers who have felt that just by their own experimentation of not smoking, if they took a break and then smoking, they said that they felt more alert when they were smoking, that somehow that blocked the worst.
Yeah, and there's this, I studied nicotine. Of course, smoking, I don't recommend people smoke, but if you smoke natural tobacco with as least chemicals as possible, you still get, the nicotine repairs brain cells. That's proven by many different scientific studies. Mm-hmm. Nicotine in itself. But also what I've discovered, that people that are what we call awakened or can see more than others, most of them are smokers. Everywhere I met them, here in Thailand, Norway, England, wherever, they're smokers. That's just fascinating.
It is interesting.
So, but that could also be, other social things that, but still. But that's a side step. So no, I made that, and it was a harrowing job to get all the pieces together, and but mostly I had some. I was living on a small farm in Sweden mostly when I was editing this, sitting in front of the fireplace, and I had to use this kind of mobile, modem. And if I needed some documents to download, it took forever, and I had, I don't know, I can't prove this, but I can, you have to trust me on this one, but I had an apartment in Oslo, so when I had freelance film work, I'm a freelance film photographer, I went to Oslo for a few days and I did my job and, went back to the little village, or the little farm in Sweden. But there, one day in about March, and I was like, my father was very, very tenuous with me that I always checked, I double checked, I locked the door before I left my home and all that, And I always double check. And I came back to the cabin and the door was locked, but, the lock was open. And I said, that's strange. It never happened to me before.
What do you mean the door was locked, but it was open?
Yeah, but the door was not standing open. It was not locked,
Uh-huh.
And this was like in the middle of the boondoggles, really like Alan Watt lived, really in the boondoggles. A small little farm I bought for a very small price after my father died in 2007. And I was going to try to grow food there, when spring came and all that, but, that didn't happen. But the point being is that when I came inside, I said, okay, well, there's the first thing for everything. Maybe I just lost. I was 2 weeks out since I've been at the farm, so maybe I just forgot to lock it. But I never do that. And then I came into my apartment, now into the living room of the farm, and then I just got the lights on, I got the fire going, and then I said, okay, I'm going to have myself a brandy or a cognac or something. It was a long drive for 3 hours from Oslo, and it was a weekend, and I had been working for a whole week, and I couldn't find, I had one crystal favorite glass that was my father's, and that was gone. So that's very strange. I always put that in the corner in the cupboard in the kitchen. So that was gone. Okay, I used another one, and that's strange. Got some ice cubes. And then I went into the living room and I put on some lights and then just strolled about. And then I noticed that some of the books in my bookshelves were just moved,
Interesting.
Because the color of, yeah. And here comes the kicker so I said, that's very strange. And somebody's been in here and somebody's pulling my leg. That's what my instinct were. And come April, May, all the snow had thawed away into the forest. I was out with my dog, just walking about. And don't you think I find that glass standing on a stub, like a cut down tree, where, 200 meters behind my house.
So you never
drink, what I mean?
You never drink so much brandy that you would take that fine crystal of your father's and leave it.
Meters out knee deep in snow and just, I'll put my glass here, and but it was like more or less half covered with snow still, but I just saw it and it glimmered and said, my God, there it is. And then it all came to me. Somebody's been there just, poking me. From certain authorities, I don't know, Swedish secret police, I don't know. But that was just during my time producing this documentary, actually. Mm-hmm. So that was very strange. Another episode that happened, I think, the same year, but earlier. My farm was like, I had one neighbor, but he was like 80 years old. He was a hunter, and in the summertime, he had some vegetable agriculture going on, and very nice old school man. But, there was no neighbors, and there's no reason for nobody to come down there because it's like 4 kilometers from a main road, from a small nobody's village. And then when I was driving out at 9 o'clock in the morning, I was going back to Oslo to do another job. There was this, like an Volkswagen Audi station wagon, and there was all new, and he was just standing there idling engine. I was just driving by in my Jeep, and there was a guy inside, and he was just eyeballing me all the time. And then I'm just like, what the hell are you doing here? There's nothing to see. It's a dead end, road, just another 100 meters, So it was like small things like that, so I find that interesting.
What you're talking about, Alan had similar things that happened to him and that also happened to me, when I was there. But one thing that happened before I was up there was a similar thing. There was no reason for anybody to be there because there were 2 houses on his side of the railroad tracks, and then there was one other house that was down in this kind of valley area in front of the railroad tracks, and those were the only 3 houses for like 2 kilometers. So even if somebody got completely turned around, there was a turnout there, so they'd figure out, okay, I'm not where I want to be, I'll use the turnout and go back. But he had the person that would just sit there the way you're describing, and they did it almost like intimidation. So 4 or 5 days in a row, they just parked their car there, and they had those kind of shaded windows that, the black cars have, the official cars.
Yeah.
And finally, on the 4th or 5th...
it had tinted windows.
Yeah, tinted windows. On the 4th or 5th day, he walked down to the car, and he was literally like 3 feet away from the window. And finally, after he just stood there for, 15, 20 seconds, enough for it to be uncomfortable, they rolled down the window, and they had the kind
Hello?
of... They said...
Yeah.
He said, hey, listen, you guys, if you're going to sit here and watch me, would you like a little coffee? And they're like, oh, no, and they ended up leaving and not coming back. But it was an intimidation thing, and when they saw that it wasn't working...
Yeah.
The other thing that happened, this actually happened when I was there, and it was a spooky thing. Alan had told me before I was there that he had found bugs, wiretapping bugs, and he showed me where in the house that they had been, where he had found them. So he was always kind of on the alert for someone coming in the house. Now, that was weird. What he described was something high level, because he came back and the door was locked and there was no sign anywhere. And he was talking to someone on the phone, and the next day, and he heard what he had said to that person was being repeated out of the mouth of a radio host, a piece of information.
That is interesting.
Yeah. And that actually happened, even though we were always very conscious of it and looking for that kind of thing. Because keep in mind, and Alan was fond of pointing out, that they don't have to put a bug, because that's really old school.
No.
They can use all kinds of things, a jack or a different meter in your house, and get a recording off of that and get the information that they need. But we would several times, something that we talked about or something that he talked about on the phone with somebody else, and that's two different technologies there. He's on the phone, or the other one was just the two of us talking, not on the phone. And I heard that we heard different hosts, not just one, but several different people over the years would repeat back things that, and it would be almost in real time, so that a few hours later or the next day. And Alan's position on this was that more than anything else, it was about intimidation. One time we went grocery shopping, and we came home from the grocery store, and the door, it had been played with, but played with in a way that was almost like a deliberate message.
It showed you that I've been then nibbling on, scratching a little bit, you know, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they do that. And I heard about some other, that's many years ago, but he was living in Sweden at the time, and his bike was, he came out of some shopping, and then his bike was moved like 10 meters down and open and locked again at a different place. He was also in truth seeker. So they do these tactics for sure.
There's somebody else that taught
when I experienced.
Oh, I was just going to say, somebody else that talked to Alan one time, and I can't say who they were. I mean, I won't say who they are, but they described an intimidation. In other words, they were people who also spoke out, and they had their own show. And they told Alan that various kinds of intimidation had been used, exactly what you're talking about. And these things sound really paranoid, like you've got delusions when you repeat them to someone. So Alan, he wouldn't really talk about it, but they described going into the bathroom, knowing that they had left their towels hanging in a certain way, but then coming back and the towels were different. They had been moved. And this happened to them over and over again, and they kind of got into a game with it where they would put something, all but have cameras in the house to see. And sure enough, they would come back. There would be no evidence of illegal entry, but things were moved and played with just to mess with your head. One thing that I wanted to get before we go further is just a little bit more of your background. We talked about the project that you did, but you're from Norway, and you have also worked as a professional photographer. And now you're living in Thailand. So if there is anything that you want to fill in there, if you want to fill in gaps and talk about your background, that'd be great.
Yeah, I can tell you about when after military, which in Norway everybody had to attend at the time, and I was 89, 90. I was 1 year in the infantry, and then I started at film school 1991, film and photo school. Examined 2 years later, got a job at the school before I was finished, was an assistant to the film teacher. Then he stopped working at the school because he thought they were educating too many for the small country of Norway. And that was a good call. And then but he had such a large network, and he has been a professional for 30 years. So I started working for him, because I was good at my work. And through him, I got contacts, and I started traveling all over the world since 1996 as a freelance. Then I became a freelance, got my own television camera equipment, sound, lights, everything. And from 96 to 2018, I traveled the world.
Did you do
mostly? I've been to like 85
like
countries all over Africa, Latin America, Myanmar, Congo, and so many places you wouldn't believe.
So journalistic photography, journalism.
Yeah, making documentaries and working with, I had like at least 6 different clients that worked internationally, but was based in Oslo. So I worked for German television, Norwegian television, Japanese television, all kinds, British, so all kinds of topics, it was, everything from, hunger, poverty, all these things, AIDS problems, I was covering that war, conflict in Myanmar. I think I've been 25 times to Myanmar.
Oh my goodness.
And one time, and I was embedded for 2 months there, with the Karen guerrilla, all alone, just taking pictures for a book. That was my first book project. And that was pretty, interesting. I got the malaria, the dengue fever, malaria 2 times, dengue once. Yeah, but, I liked it because, that was just, in 1999, Big Brother came on the television screens, and I could either stand in a big hangar filming, that trash TV, or I think, I'd rather go and see the world, Mm-hmm. So I did that. So I went freelance, completely in 96, and then I met the Norwegian-German journalist, and he said that I need one guy I can depend on and call, because it can be on short notice, and can you travel like 50 to 100 days a year? Yeah, sure. And then I got other contacts after a while, because then I was traveling, most of the year, So I was, and we went a lot to the Central American region with him. But he was married to a Norwegian TV producer and had 3 children in Norway, so he was practically become a Norwegian. But, he had German contacts in the television industry and so forth. So we had a lot of trips to Guatemala, El Salvador, and Nicaragua, Peru, Bolivia, these places, Mm-hmm. So, and we did different, we worked with a lot of different Norwegian aid organizations, and they sponsored the TV programs and then the TV channels, and we had some celebrity singers with us sometimes, and all kinds. But we made a documentary about, for example, the peace deal that Norway was brokered in Guatemala in 1994. We made that in 1998 for the Foreign Department of Norway. So we made an hour documentary on that, and I made so much, it's countless, so many programs and features, documentaries, and that was back in the videotape days, so all the TV channels, they sit on that material now. And, but later, in the digital world, I could, take the memory cards from the cameras and, dump it over to my computer. And so I had a lot of my own material from, that was like many years later, but I wish I had more of the programs, the documentary is still, but that's what it is. But I got to see the world, and to such an extent that when I came to certain villages in Guatemala, they recognized me year from year because I was there like a couple of times a year, with different clients, Oh, el fotógrafo noruego, and so it's funny. So it's, and I got to know a lot about, and then also another thing with my career that I stood out a little bit from the other freelancers is that one, I wasn't afraid of, going to conflict zones, and two, I was always reading about the different countries I was visiting, and the journalist, the producer, appreciated a lot because, there's a lot of transport, there's a lot of waiting, You're sitting at the hotel lobby, you're sitting and having dinner, you're on an airplane, you're on a bus, in a jeep, but they can actually talk to me because I had read a lot. So I had, read about the Civil War in, for example, Guatemala, and I knew a lot about what happened there and CIA involvement and so forth. So they liked that they could discuss things with me. So I was just not just a photographer, So
right.
So I read a lot of. First, I started with Noam Chomsky, and then I went deeper, and then later, out in the early 2000s, I think the first time I heard Alan was in 2004 or 5. Yeah, very early.
Long time, yeah.
And then even I burnt CDs and gave them to my father also, and he loved listening to. Oh, I love his voice; it's so calm. and my father was so. Yeah, and he was like, and so much new things I learned, and he loved to hear about old history and. Yeah, so, when he passed away, that was very hard for me because he was not only my father, but we had a very great connection at the end there, the last 5 years of his life. And he was like, he actually got me to see that 9/11 was an inside job because I gave him a book. And then I was off to Africa on some assignment. And then when I came back, he had read it 2 times. You got to read this book, Elmer, you gave me. And then there was something about the new Pearl Harbor, it was called, or something like that. And then I read it and like, oh my God. And you're right. And then we dwelled deep into the 9/11, because he was a pilot and he had been to New York 300 times, landing in, since the 60s and taking off. And he just like, from a pilot standpoint, this story is just hogwash,
Yeah.
And so on. So, but, sadly he passed away in 2007 in August. There's so much more I would like to talk to him about, but he died in just 6 days from acute leukemia.
Oh.
So that was, in 5.5 days he died. He was just walking about and was fine. And then even the doctors were baffled because it was so short time frame. So
is so. Did he didn't even really have symptoms? It was just there, and then that was it.
It just came. He had pain in his left knee, right knee, and then we took it into the ER, and they did some tests, and then the day after he had got acute leukemia. And then 2 days later he went into a coma, and the whole immune system shuts down and your blood production shuts down and everything got infected, and I lost contact with him that weekend, and I just played some records, some old jazz records on a small CD player for him and talked to him because I know they usually hear,
Yes.
And made sure he got a lot of painkillers, but even the doctors were baffled because he died so fast.
Oh,
the world record is 48 hours to die from acute leukemia, but it's very normal for pilots if they get cancer, to get leukemia.
Really?
Because they're flying very high. Yeah. And stewardesses and all air cabin personnel, yeah. So the world record is 48 hours. My father died in maybe 78 hours or something like that. So
wow.
One of my Truder friends, they said, it's probably foul play. They gave him cancer. So I don't know. We can't prove that. I said, Yeah, but he was going to call, he was very vocal. He called all pilots, friends, colleagues, and talked about 9/11 a lot. And I said to my dad that, they're probably going to think you're crazy. And well, they did, So Many. So I don't know. There could be foul play, but I can't prove that. Because he was just like up and going and so healthy and just so fast, So,
sorry about that. That must have been very hard for everybody in the family, and to lose your, dad and your very good friend.
Yeah. Yeah, and he was so smart. He was like a part-time inventor on his free time. He was like, but he still had a very young mind, open mind. So he was open for all the things, and we discussed Knights, Templars, and everything. It was the very good times, So I miss that, but I got friends because I blogged for so many years. I blogged for almost 10 years in Norwegian and English, 2 different blogs, and I got friends through the Norwegian blog. So we got to be a little group, about 7 and 8 people, and we came together every 2-3 times a month. And, exchange books and discuss different topics. That was very nice to have people to talk to, which, were on the same level.
Yeah.
So, so we had kind of a club, a Truth Club.
Well, that's good. So many people come into this information and start to see that reality isn't as it's been presented, and they have no one to talk to. It's that's tough.
I know. It's very, very tough to be in. You feel like a stranger in a strange land, like I say. After a while, because you actually discover that you've been lied to about almost everything, and then you get angry, and then and finally you accept it, and then, but I've lost so many, college friends, I still have one left that 20 years later, he says to me that 19 years later or something like that, he says, Elmer, I thought you were crazy, but a lot of the things you have discussed about geopolitics and such, it all came to be. And then, how did you know? Well, like I told you, just read the documents and the books, and then okay, so that was the only guy. The rest, I was even sabotaged at one of the TV stations where I had a friend, which was a photographer, but I told him about 9/11 and what I thought, and then he went squalling and gossiping around, and that I'd lost my mind, and I thought that was in the CIA, it was behind, and blah, blah, blah. So I lost freelance jobs because just talking. Yeah. So I learned to shut up then.
Yeah. It is interesting. I think a big part of that is that people want you to be like them, because if you're making them think or question the official story, that's really uncomfortable.
Yeah. It's like you have to rethink everything, and that's just what one of my friends said too. But if that's right, what you say, Elmer, then we have to rethink everything. Yes, you have to do that.
Yeah.
You have to invert it, Yeah. And then, well, I'm not willing to do that, so bye-bye then, So, and then that's it, And I had the same thing with the corona thing. I smelled that far away. And, don't you even touch those jabs, Even before they were talking about, they're going to come with their solution, which is the jab, some kind of crap they've been developing for decades, most likely. And I recently found out that I listened to another very good podcaster. I can't listen to much anymore because they're just so behind, they're far behind. I'm sorry. And there are so many shills out there now, so it's like never before. But where were
well, it's something that I wanted to just interject here. You sent me a recent documentary that you did, And there is a quote. There's a quote in there. You just reminded me of that. It's the Nietzsche quote, where he said the world can be divided into two groups: those who want to believe and those who want to know.
Yes, that's true. I used that in the documentary. Yes, and I'm no fan of Nietzsche. I think that he was one of the first transhuman authors.
Yeah, but it's a good quote nonetheless.
Yeah. So I used that, and it's like Alan said. He had stopped taking picture of chemtrails, and after I made that documentary, I was finished with it. I just we tried to get it out to as many as possible, but. And I tried to talk to people, but, and the onslaught of the cell phone and social media, people disconnected from nature, and I tried to show them old photo albums. Look, there's no chemtrails. This is summer 1977 in Norway. Yeah. And here are 100 more pictures, no chemtrails. And then they're like, yeah, but, global warming and, people are just, come on, So it's like... Very hard.
I experienced a conversation with somebody a couple of years ago where they thought, I'm going to talk to them about chemtrails just because we happen to be out looking at, I said, look at the spraying that they're doing. And he said, are you one of those that believe in chemtrails and I'll lie about anything as but they're honest about that.
Yeah, that's it. They can see that, but not that.
No, it's fascinating.
That is. But just to turn it to the last, it's the most. I don't know what to call it, but the Corona Operation Corona is the weirdest thing I've ever been through.
Yeah.
I must admit it was so bizarre, and for me for once the last coffin in the nail. Then we knew already we had a one world government. The whole thing is like wow. So it's going to be very exciting, not exciting, but interesting to see the next 5 to 10 years how all this comes together, and what happens, But I must say it's very sad. The whole thing is so sad, but then again, what can you do? So,
it is. This is an interesting thing that since you have been, kind of awake to reality for a long, long time, you've probably experienced this, where you tell someone, this is what's going on, or you say, don't do X, Y, and Z, because if you do X, Y, and Z, this is what's going to happen, because I've been studying it. Well, the first thing they'll do is say that you're a crazy kook. But the second thing, if it becomes obvious that you were right, and Alan said this himself from his own experience, they're going to do one of two things. They're going to conveniently forget that you ever told them what was going to happen or not to do something, or they're going to become really angry with you. Yeah.
And I remember also Alan talking about having a one-on-one way back in time, deprogramming courses with people, and some people came back and they were angry at him because they didn't they were not ready for it.
Yes. Yeah.
And this I have experienced myself too. And it's the old cliche, don't kill the messenger and all that, but people just turn on you. Yeah. They
Absolutely.
do. Yeah. And that's what I'm just like, that's why I also made that latest documentary is about, how NASA is fooling everybody with Hollywood and, the whole space opera thing.
I just want to mention that quickly. I'll be posting that one with this talk, and I may even use some of your footage in there. But it's called NASA. Yeah,
talk about
NASA
that.
plus Nazis and Hollywood, and it's really good. You did a good job. I enjoyed it.
That was one of the biggest awakening I had in my life when I discovered that they're lying about everything about space. Almost everything. Mm-hmm. We can't check it ourselves. And I'm a photographer, and I've been doing photography since I was 13 years old, and then I went professional. And I can see when something is computer generated or is on film or is like, what the hell is going on here? And I can see when things are lit up from 6 angles or 5 angles. And there's no way like the moon landings are just like a 5-year-old with an IQ of 95 can figure out that's fake, you know. but of course, it's like a religion for people.
Yes. Yeah.
It's become like a sideshow, So, and everybody's like, and I use this metaphor. Okay, let's say we could go to Mars and all these places, and they're not faking anything of the footage. Why would we go to a dry, dead planet when we have one that's perfectly fine here? Mm-hmm. What is all this hype about going to places that are lifeless? You see what I mean? That makes no sense, So, and so on and so on. And Elon Musk is out there, and he's of course an actor on the world stage. And and people get mad. But even today, and I say, if it was so easy in 1969 until 72, 73, 6 times perfectly, NASA with their Apollo missions then must of course name everything from Greek gods, of course, and they perfectly landed and came back. But nobody in 52 years have ever sent a manned mission again.
Yeah.
What's going on? It's just there, it falls apart. And then the footage, and so you build a spacecraft, you say it costs 150 billion, you put the worst thinkable camera on it. That doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense, You see, and it's always grainy, fuzzy. And we lost connection. And they're kicking down the can down the road all the time. Artemis, we're going to the moon. We sent this with some dummies inside the cockpit. And it's just like, why? You did this perfectly half a century ago. What's the problem? Well,
I love what
the
astronaut in the film, the astronaut that is interviewed that said, well, we used to have this technology, but unfortunately we lost it, and so now we're trying to get it. Yeah. What?
Yeah. The dog, the old NASA dog, they ate their homework, So, and they lost the tapes. They had the budget problem in the sentence. Come on, give us a break.
Yeah. Now we used. I mean, that was just pretty priceless. Yeah, we did have the ability to get past the Van Allen belt, but we lost that. Misplaced that file.
But I think actually the Van Allen belt is just a cover for. I would go as far as call it the firmament or some high pressure barrier that they can't. Well, they say now, NASA, and you can see in the documentary too, that they admit they never have been higher than low Earth orbit, and that's like 70, 80 miles, 100 miles.
It's pretty funny. I mean, it's actually shocking, but it's also quite humorous.
Yeah, it's funny and shocking, and I was just liberated because. Then I in that process with just researching all that space material and all that science fiction programming and all that, and I think, this is perfect because it fits perfectly into the Darwinian model because, you're just an ant, you're a speck on a piece of dirt flying around just by coincidence, and you came from some salamander that didn't have reproduction organs for 2 million years, and then suddenly you have a brain and you're a sentient being, millions. We know that all this is bullcrap, but even Darwin admits it himself. And I think it was his grandfather that wrote the original book, Origin of the Species, according to Darwin. And it fits perfectly in with the space thing because then people, we're just like, we're just going around the sun 1,000 miles, 100,000 miles, kilometers an hour, and this, and they're scaring people with comets that never hits, or asteroids that never hits, all through my life. Oh, this comet, it's very so, no, never hits.
Yeah.
And nothing hits the moon either. That's another thing. It's the same craters as in 1980, 1975. It's the same. I've been filming the moon a lot through telescopes and everything. It's just the same thing.
Did you ever see a television show that Alan mentioned a few times? A British show from 1968, I think, called The Newsbenders.
Oh yes. I saw that one. That is perfect.
It is perfect.
I've shown that to a lot. I shown that to a lot of. Yeah.
Well, see, to me, I think that what your documentary does is give this piece of half-hour British television fiction. You have legitimized the con. You have shown how the con is pulled off. Because in that half hour, basically what we learn is, there's a secret brotherhood or whatever, but those in the know control the news. And they don't just control the news. They don't say you can publish this, but you can't publish that. They actually create the news. And you can see in the studio, they are faking a moon landing. I mean, come on, this is 1968.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And then, even the James Bond movie, it's not Goldfinger, it's one with Sean Connery. I think that was in the 70s. That was even during that was 71, 72, and that was the last moon landing, and they kind of poked the viewer by him raiding a studio and taking a moon boogie, out, and you saw, astronauts in a TV setting, with lights, and it's like, and then you can see Capricorn 1 from 1977.
Yes, yeah.
And, that's interesting too. But that's, it's always, we can't use that as proof or anything, but the proof is in the pudding when you look at the mathematics doesn't add up, the pictures doesn't add up, there should be a time lag, you can't have a telephone landline and no time lag to the moon if the distance they say it is 300,000 miles and so forth. It's just like everything falls apart. I mean, everything. When you look at it, with little bits of scrutiny. And tin foil, and come on, give us a break, man. So it's, but people want to believe, and it's like, belief, and I think for Americans, it was really like, they felt very proud,
Well, it's part of American exceptionalism. Look what we did.
Yeah, we are so fantastic, the greatest country in the world, and look, we landed on the moon, and now we can't go, we don't know how to go back.
Yeah.
No, but it's, but at the time, I think there was done a survey, and a lot of Americans actually didn't buy it at the time. They said they were fakery, yeah.
Yes, well, my grandfather was one of those, I remember, and when I was young, the family all thought he was a kook because, of course, we went to the moon. You know what I mean? So, Granddad just like, no, we didn't do it. Didn't happen.
No. And then, I do in the documentary, I just ask the simple question: if there is in nothing, nature hates a vacuum. Okay?
Yes. Yeah.
So it abhors a vacuum. So in a vacuum, how can you have anything burning? Because you need oxygen, right? So how can a rocket work in in nothingness, in vacuum, and then have nothing to push, to accelerate on? Then you have to bring oxygen and rocket fuel. And I think Warner Brown actually spilled the beans. He said that you needed 3 Empire State Buildings just in fuel to just leave Earth orbit. you know? And, you know, the things like that, but, you know, those things are just forgotten in time. But, and he has some interesting things on his tombstone. It's not a proof, but it's, I think verse 19:3, when it says, and God's handiwork is shown through his creation of the firmament or something like that. That's on the tombstone of Werner von Braun. That was the Apollo leader of and the Saturn rocket and chief engineer. And why would he have that on his tombstone? So that's interesting. So no, I think, you know, and how the earth is shaped and all these flat earth things. I'm not a flat earther, but I'm just like, you know, they're lying about so many things. And I think they're lying about the size of where we live. I think so. And also what's interesting is we have all these, they have the Antarctic Treaty. 58 countries have signed that in 1958, and you have the international space agencies working together, China, India, Russia, America, Britain. When you have all these treaties, how can they be enemies?
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Yeah.
That's another telltale. That's a big red flag, you know?
Yeah.
That just tells that they're long time ago they agreed upon this, you know?
Yeah.
And the theater of war is just for the normal people out there to just like gobble up, you know.
You do kind of reach a point where you understand. I mean, Alan talked about the sharing of information between scientists from Russia,
oh, yes.
Soviet Union and the U.S. and the West and whatnot. But so on a certain level, wars can be fought and they're real and there can be loss of life and strategy and people who really, really take it seriously. But at the upper level where we can't see who's got the strings on the marionettes, they've got a whole different thing going on. It's a whole, you know, it's like a play within a play, if you will. It's not at all what we think it is. And I've gone through different points in my journey of understanding where I've gone through different places where I just think everything is rubbish. You know, oh, that's just it's just manufactured.
Yeah, now everybody's screaming about this guy that put himself on fire in the Middle East. And I said, and you see it's just like, so timely, it's timed, and then all the truth channels that jump on that and they talk about that for 2 weeks. And it's probably just a stunt man.
Yes.
You know? Yeah, and it's like, oh, come on, stop wasting your time. They're just like dishing it out, you know. It's go grow some tomatoes instead. You know? You know, it's like, and it's fascinating to see and Alan was talking about this 15, 16 years ago, that just watch out. They're going to tighten the noose of the internet. First, it's going to be open and free, and people can say whatever they want on YouTube, and then it's going to be tighter and tighter, you know, and look now.
Yes.
The quality of the so-called truth movement is such terrible conditions compared to what it was. And now you can't find information that's valuable, you know. Well, harder.
You're absolutely on a wavelength with the redux that I just put up, because Alan made that exact same comment about truth or, you know, / alternative or whatever that you just made, you know, during, he said this in 2020. He said you used to have genuine voices that were coming out and saying things that mattered and needed to be heard. And we don't have that. With rare exceptions, we really don't have that now.
No, it's gone down, like I say, 85% or something like that. Yeah. And I have, I've been watching so many different, you know, channels through the years, and, you know, and I can just like, I have a young Canadian musician friend, he's 41, young is, well, younger than me. But he's very informed, and he's a, you know, truth seeker, and he's unvaxxed and he gets everything, you know. not everything. And I tried to steer in the right direction. And now don't listen to Alex Jones, I say. It's a waste of time. He's just a fearmonger. He's going to sell all you the products and then, no, thank you for the advice. And I try to, point to cutting through the matrix. But what I've experienced a lot is that it's too much for people. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's too heavy. And I know always Alan said that people complain I'm negative, but he was not negative. It's just saying the facts.
Yeah.
It's just reading up from documents, and this is what they say. And well, if you can't take it, that's not my problem.
Well, one of the techniques in the alternative world, because don't forget there's advertisers to be satisfied. They have networks, and whatever their mission statement is about doing something to change things, they have bills to pay and people that are working for them, and et cetera, et cetera. So
of course.
they're limited right off the bat. They are constrained, but you have a rhythm there that is expected. And that Alan didn't have to follow that rhythm. So he could talk for 5 or 6 hours if he wanted to. Yeah. People used to write sometimes and say, why don't you have a rant? It would be so good if you just let yourself go and rant. Well, that really wasn't his style, because that's kind of like wrestling or it's entertainment, it's show business.
Yeah.
You've got expected rhythms, you talk about. So you whip up the fear for X amount of minutes, and then you deliver a solution, and different shows have different solutions. So the solution might be donating to the building of a church, or the solution might be buying gold and silver, or the solution might be taking a supplement. You see what I mean? There's something to be sold.
They're selling wine, they're selling this, that, whatever. And there's been, come on, it's like I can smell a COINTELPRO or a shell from a mile away.
Yeah.
And I have my old folder here just to show, my newfound, like Bob the musician, that's the truth. And I just show him here's 44 shells. Just look at them. Don't listen to these guys, okay? It's like, how do you know that? Well, experience. I've been listening to tens of thousands of hours for 20 years, so it's like it becomes your life in a way, because now you're seen outside, inside, then you can't go back. You can't close Pandora's box, so. And then on the way, you just here's Jay Dyer. He's connected to Infowars. He's a shill. Here you have We Are Changed. You're paid by the same guys, and so.
Well, so, I do my very best, Elmer, not to name names, part of it is this. Yeah. As Alan would say, you can't think for people.
No, that's true.
So they've got to, and then if you are, kicking their favorite hero in the kneecaps, they're like, well, so. And everybody comes to the information in their own way. And I also have to say this: there are a lot of people who discovered Alan Watts talks because they found him on Alex Jones, for instance, or whatever.
Yeah, I understand how it works. Of course, he was there, but he was there just a few times.
Yeah. And
you can see the deterioration of the guests he has had home since early 2000s, it's just gone downhill. And he was like a system critic. Now and suddenly in 2016, he's embracing the fake two-party system, And then
I will say this: if anybody is telling you to vote for somebody, they really are either a shill or they're totally clueless. This is not.
And how can you go back?
Yeah. You cannot say that you are awake to reality, but there is a solution to be found in the voting booth. That it doesn't add up in a way that stinks to high heaven. Whoever it is who's saying it.
Yeah. So that's why I say too, and I hate to use the cliche that Mark Twain said, allegedly many have said this, that if voting actually could change anything, it would be illegal.
That's right.
And yeah. So it's kind of that way, and I think but I have hope for the future too, because I see in America that a lot of people are doing homesteading, and they're coming together, they're helping each other, they're building slowly new communities, and so I see some silver linings on the clouds. Actually, but
I noticed that too. I noticed that in the last 4 years, and I think that's a good thing. And I try to, some of these people who are doing homesteading or who are having gardens, they are also going to Trump rallies, and they're also voting. And it's like, well, you can't you can't dismiss them out of hand and say, oh, well, you don't get it at all, because waking up is a process, and if they're doing one positive thing, like helping their neighbor, and then two positive things like growing a garden and helping their neighbor, there's hope there.
Yeah, that's very good, and that's good enough.
Yeah.
For starters.
Yes, absolutely.
So, So that's how I look at it.
The second part is going to go up at the end of the month. And I thank you all for listening. I've really enjoyed this because I had not spoken to Elmer before. He had been communicating with Alan for years, and it was fun to just dive right into a conversation with you. And then, but I also want to say for the listeners that next week I will be talking with Neil Foster, and Neil is just getting back from the UK. He's still over there right now as I record, but as far as I know, he'll be back next week and we'll be talking. So I thank you all for listening, and tune in at the end of the month for part 2 with Elmer.
Well, I've got something that the world didn't give me, and the world cannot take it away.